So good evening, dear friends, dear Sangha. Thank you for being here tonight. We do hope that everyone feels more awake after the singing practice. So tonight we have the chance to share about the practice of the 5 mindfulness trainings, which are, we can say, very concrete expression of love offered to us by the Buddha thousands of years ago. And they have been reworded and updated by our teacher for them to be more appropriate to our time, for them to better respond to the true needs of our time. The Buddha says that we suffer because we do not see. We do not train ourselves. We do not learn how to train ourselves to be more mindful, to be more aware of what is there in our body, in our feelings. And that is why we cannot see clearly what exactly makes us suffer. And why is it that we suffer so much? So, because we cannot see clearly what makes us suffer, and the reason why we suffer, the cause of our suffering, that is why we do not know how to help ourselves to suffer less and to help others to do the same. In his teachings on the Four Noble Truths, his first teaching after his enlightenment, he says as a first noble truth, yes, there is suffering. There is suffering in your body, in your mind. So you need to learn to be aware of what it is, of what is there that you call suffering. You need to call it by its true name. Is it anger or depression or too much stress, too much failure in life? So we need to be aware of what it is there and what makes us suffer. So that is the first teaching on the first noble truth. We learn how to be aware of what makes us feel so unhappy. And when we are aware of what is there, what makes us suffer, we learn how to look more deeply into the cause of our suffering, the second noble truth. What is the making of your suffering? What is the cause of your suffering? Because nothing happens by accident. There must be some reason. And that is why we need to learn how to be aware of the first and of the second noble truth. What exactly makes us unhappy? What exactly makes us suffer? Call it by its true name. And the second truth, we need to be aware of the making of that kind of suffering. So when we are aware of this, so the first and the second noble truths are about suffering, why we suffer, and what makes us suffer. And we need to learn to be aware of it so that you can go to the third noble truth. The Buddha said there is a way helping you to put an end to your suffering. It is possible to be happy again if you know how, and if you truly want to, because sometimes we may know how, but we are possessed by our strong habit energy and we are lazy, changing our way of life, changing our strong habits. That creates only suffering. Still, we cannot free ourselves from it. So if you truly want to, if you want to wake up or to help yourself, you shall see there's a way helping you putting an end to your suffering. The third noble truth. So the four noble truths, and he shows us what are the practices that can help us to suffer less, to bring more peace and joy to ourselves, to everyone around. And the 8 practices are right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right mindfulness, right concentration, right diligence, right livelihood. So the teaching of the four noble truths can be applied in any situation in our daily life. If you know how to apply it in your daily life, in any situation you have to face, things happen that way, and you can ask yourself, why is it so? Am I practicing right view? Am I practicing right thinking, right speech, right action, and so on? And things become very clear. You shall know how to help yourself to suffer less, put an end to your suffering, to bring more peace and joy and happiness to yourself, to your loved ones, to your family, to your society. So the 5 mindfulness trainings, they contain the essence of the 4 noble truths. And if we know how to practice the 5 mindfulness training in the light of the 4 noble truths, learning how to cultivate more understanding, more love, more respect for ourselves and for others. And we shall see how to guide with the practice of the 5 mindfulness trainings in the light of the 4 noble truths. You learn how to train ourselves. We learn how to train ourselves to guide ourselves more wakefully, more safely through life, knowing how to protect ourselves and others from all kinds of suffering we are facing now in our time. Even we already get sick because living in that kind of the world, invaded by all kinds of sicknesses in different ways at different levels, we can easily get sick. But with the practice of the 5 mindfulness training, we shall know how to help ourselves to get healed without much difficulty. We only need some training. That is why we call it the 5 trainings. So our 5 young friends that are here, sitting very beautifully in front of us, we would like to thank them for their willingness to share the practice about the practice of the 5 mindfulness trainings, and we can learn from the sharing, from their own experiences, and we can see whether we can also help ourselves to improve the quality of our life, helping us to bring more peace and joy and happiness to ourselves, to our family, to our society. So each of our friends shall have 8 to 10 minutes to share. And before sharing, they shall introduce themselves a little bit. And after each sharing, we shall enjoy oneself there. For us to read and go to the next sharing. So let us enjoy one more sound the bell before we start the sharing, and we shall start first with the 5th mindfulness training. So thank you again, dear friends, for your kind support.
The 5th mindfulness training, nourishment and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption, I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society, by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the 4 kinds of nutriments, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness. I am determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or any other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment, to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements in me and around me, not letting regrets and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxieties, fear, or craving pull me out of the present moment. I am determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate interbeing and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body and consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth. Dear Thai, dear brothers and sisters, dear friends, my name is Noemi. I'm French, and I'm actually at the moment a long-term lay friend here at Taipei Village. So I'm going to confess that when I received the 5 mindfulness trainings 5 years ago, I was definitely not an ideal candidate for it. I was very inspired by this 5th mindfulness training, which is why I chose to speak about it today. But if I'm very honest, I was in a place in my life where I was covering up my suffering with a lot of unmindful consumption, if I'm using the words that we're using here. So for me, it was, I lived in Paris and I had a very high stress job, and I would go home in the evenings and I would definitely every evening drink alcohol, smoke marijuana, and take a lot of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. And on the weekends I would meet my friends and we'd go out and I'd drink a lot and take hard drugs. So how do you go from being an addict to sitting in Plum Village 5 years later and not running outside to take drugs or drink alcohol? Well, it took a lot of work and a lot of practice, and there's no miracle, but I believe that what I was doing was covering up very, very deep and serious trauma. And I was consuming things to escape my suffering, which obviously led me to suffer more. And at one point, the suffering became so strong that I had to find a way to end that suffering. And very, very fortunately, I was told by a friend to come to Plum Village in France. And I went on a health retreat there. And I received the 5 mindfulness trainings at the end of that retreat. And obviously, as soon as I went home, I started using drugs again. It wasn't a joke, but I understand that it's also a bit funny now. So obviously I came back the year after that and I received the trainings again. And in my journey, I've definitely had to begin anew with myself very many times. One thing that happened that was quite miraculous was that after I received the trainings, I fell quite ill. And I started having an autoimmune disorder that made me basically stay in bed for about a year and a half. I couldn't walk. And I think I really needed that, because even though I was still taking things and trying to cover up my suffering, I was forced to pull myself out of certain environments that were feeding this consumption. And I didn't want to pull myself out of those environments. So what happened was I felt like I didn't really have much of a choice, and I had to start taking better care of myself. And bit by bit, things got a lot easier. But it took years, and it took a lot of loving kindness towards myself, which is something that I didn't know how to do. So I had to learn that. And that's also a practice that we can learn here in Plum Village. There are many different ways to practice loving kindness for ourselves. One of my favorite ways is to practice the metta meditation, which is a meditation where we actually wish to ourselves to be free from suffering. And I would do that every day, and I would have my little 5 mindfulness training certificate sitting in front of my bed, and I would try and reread this training quite often. But I definitely didn't make it alone. I think one of the main reasons people fall into addictions, and this is maybe not the case for everybody, but I feel like a lot of it is due to loneliness. And for me, I had to take refuge in the Sangha, So learning to love myself meant finding new environments where I was better nourished, and new friends, and asking for help. And so I definitely went back to Plum Village many times, many retreats. And today I see that the reason why I can stand up here and talk about it and come to Plum Village for 3 months and not feel cravings is because I've learned something that I think a lot of us haven't learned in our childhood, and that's to listen to our needs. So I'm sure we all have had some beautiful memories and also some difficult memories. My friend is telling me that I've spoken for 5 minutes, so I have another. So I don't, I can't pretend to speak for everybody, but I get the feeling that we don't necessarily get taught to pay much attention to what we really need. And for me, I was not conditioned in that way at all. I was conditioned to believe that I had to please other people if I wanted to be a good person, and that speaking about my needs was not something that made me a good person. So I used the practice, and I turned to the practice here to come back to my body a lot, which also meant coming back to my suffering, which is why it's very important to have an environment that supports us. Because if I come back to my suffering but I'm not strong enough, if I come back to my body and the first thing that comes up is suffering, I need to make sure that I'm not drowning, because otherwise I turn back to the things that I used to escape. So coming back to my body in the present moment, I discovered that my body has a lot more to say than my mind. My mind tells a story, but my body actually gives me a lot of information about the things that I want, the things that I truly need. I can give some examples, because I wasn't very good at this at the beginning. Sometimes it's hard to know, for example, we're being asked by a friend if we want to go out to the movies or something, and if we're used to doing things according to shoulds, like I should do this, then maybe we will automatically think that it's a good idea to go to the movies. But maybe we're tired and we don't know if it's going to make us happy in the end. So what I would do is, this was something that was told to me by a mentor that I have. I would take 3 deep breaths, and I would ask my heart, what would someone who loves themselves do? And I would just go with the first answer. So at the beginning, I didn't even know how to eat lovingly, how to sleep lovingly, what time should I go to bed, what movie should I watch. I didn't know anything about what I wanted and what I really needed. So I would do this continuously, even just to pick between apples and pears at the supermarket. And it's really been wonderful, because sometimes it got me places where I understood afterwards that I was learning a lot from the experience. And if anyone's struggling with not knowing what they really want or not knowing what they really need, I would love to suggest this. And after a few months, you'll see some wonderful miracles. Today, if I see that I'm in a situation where I'm about to make a choice that isn't nourishing for me, I get immediate anxiety, and it becomes too difficult for me to sustain that choice. It even happens with food, so I've been very healthy for the past few years, but if I start eating a few unhealthy meals, I'm very, very sensitive to the effects of that. So there's no more turning back now. I have to be mindful. I believe that every small choice that I've made that was in the direction of nourishing myself lovingly has had a ripple effect in every dimension of my life. So if you imagine that you drop a pebble into the water, you'll see some rings form outwards in the water. So everything that I've done for myself that was nourishing has affected positively my relationships and my family and my work and my Sangha. So if anybody is doubting receiving the 5 mindfulness trainings because they think they're not good enough for them, please think of me, and remember that day by day we make progress, but nothing can be done in one day. And I was a very bad student, and I made it here. So thanks to everybody.
The 4th mindfulness training, loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups and nations, knowing that words can create happiness or suffering. I am committed to speaking truthfully using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and to look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and the other person to transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to acknowledge my capacity for understanding, love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, and fear that lie deep in my consciousness. Dear sister, dear brother, my name is Nat. I'm from Bangkok, Thailand. I'm really glad to have a chance to share my experience about the mindfulness training to all of you. At first, I think it is hard for me to practice the 4th mindfulness training because I am a person that I would like to be with other people. It is hard for me to live with other people. So it is quite hard for me to practice. But anyway, I do. When I was shy, when I was a shy, I think I like to learn science and mathematics. I think I am a reasonable person, and I think the world needs to be to be more logical. We need to sensible, and we need to prove everything if it exists. But until now, I don't think so. I think there is something we should take care of. One day when I was shy, I come back to my home with my mother, and from the school, teacher taught us that humans are mammals, and so love, emotions, and anything are from our neurochemicals in our brain. And I told my mother that, Mother, I know your love is just from neurochemicals. It is not your love. And you are living things that need to like reproduce and you have like a responsibility to grow me up, something like that. At that time, I think I am very reasonable person, but later I know that words maybe hurts my mother a lot. If I am a father or I am a mother, if a son tell me that I will be very sad. It is like your love is fake. It is just from neurochemicals. And I think that and I think to be as a community, to be with other people, we need to take care of our words. We need to take care of our speech. And my practice is that I would like to share that one day I need to work with my close friend, and we are very close because I have studied with him in the university, and we have to continue to work together. We have divided the time to work together. But when it is the time to send the work, he didn't send the work, and it frustrated me a lot. At that time, I cannot contact him in Facebook, in Line. I cannot contact him. But anyway, I try to call to him and ask him that can you go with me to have to have a lunch together? And in that lunch, I intend to talk with him about the work we need to work together. But after that, when we met each other, and I intend to just ask him that why don't you are not like why don't you have responsibility to do the work? Why you are so not responsible, some kind like that. But after I met him, he told me that this day he are very busy and he faced a problem in his life. that time I know that my perception is wrong, and it is just my thought that my friend don't want to work, or he just not has the responsible. He just not responsible for his work, and I practice listen to his suffer, what's made him suffer about his work. And that day, it is like something confirmed me that my thought is unbelievable. I always thought, I always think to like a wrong way, something like that. Another things I would like to share with you, another story I would like to share with you is that I think to deep listening with our family, it is harder than when we try to have a deep listening with our friends or someone who are not close. One day, my sister come back from China, and because she need to go to China and study master degree, and I haven't faced my sister for a long time, and we need to be at the same house. We need to live in the same house. So we need to share the works together, the housework. And for that time, I am very busy. So I just working. And if I leave myself, if I leave only one in the house, I can do my housework as I want. If I don't want to do my housework, I can just pause it and waiting for a time that I'm ready to work, to do the housework. But that time my sister come, and she is the only one who do the housework for a long time, about 1 month. Then she is very angry. She told me that, "Nat, why don't you help me do the housework? I need to clean the toilet, I need to wash your dishes." That time I'm very angry. But what I do is I just come back to my breath, and I just think that whether what my sister told is true or not. After I look back to myself, I found that it is true. It is true that I didn't help my sister to do the housework. And I told my sister that I am very sorry, and I will improve myself. And I told my sister that for next month I will do all of the housework and you do nothing. Even though my sister still be angry, but I feel better that I can be mindful that I don't reply my sister with the anger. And what I would like to share more is I really like the practice that say and determine not to spread news that I do not know to be certain. At first, I think I am a kind of person that I usually not tell the story that I don't know certainly. But after I look back deeply into myself, I found that I have that habit. That is, when I have this strong emotion, when I get angry with someone, I would like to vent to some people, some friends. I would like to release my anger with another friend and tell the story that, you know, that person hurts me a lot, something like that. But after I practice by trying to not venting or not releasing my anger to the other person, I found that my thought just come and go, and the same as my emotion, my anger in my mind is there just very little moment. Actually, it is hard for me to practice like that, but after I try to not venting, not releasing my emotion to my friends, that I am more convenient to release my emotion to, I think I have learned myself something. And for me, the fourth mindfulness training teach me a lot about the impermanence of my thought and my emotions. That is all I would like to share. Thank you.
Dear family, I will recite the third mindfulness training on page 20. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I am committed to cultivating responsibility and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. Knowing that sexual desire is not love, and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others, I am determined not to engage in sexual relations without true love and a deep, long-term commitment made known to my family and friends. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. Seeing that body and mind are one, I am committed to learning appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, which are the four basic elements of true love, for my greater happiness and the greater happiness of others. Practicing true love, we know that we will continue beautifully into the future. Dear respected teacher, dear respected brothers and sisters, my name is Hazel. I'm from Malaysia. I received 5 mindfulness training a year ago. To be exact, it was on the 28th of May 2018 here in Thai Plum Village. And I was given the name, the Dharma name, Awakening Moon of the Heart. It was actually a very eye-opening for me experience for me. Like maybe all of you who are first time here in Plum Village, maybe you can understand what I'm feeling. A year ago, I came here with no expectation, empty cup, nothing. I don't know what to expect. I never even practiced mindfulness, and I never heard about Plum Village practice. So after a few days staying here, I started to be worried about how do I continue to practice once I'm back home, because like if I want to stay longer in Plum Village, it's not possible because I have responsibility outside. I have family, I have my loved one outside. So I was very worried, questioning myself, will I be able to maintain this awareness in me once I'm out, once this retreat is done, 5 days, like what will happen, you know? So when I heard about 5 mindfulness training and I went through it, I look at it as a golden opportunity for me to continue to be aware of my movement, of my choices, to be aware of how I live my life. So I decided to take the 5 mindfulness training last year. So I went back to my country, to Malaysia, and I continued to study and I continued to recite this 5 mindfulness training at least once or twice a month. And it's funny that every time I recite this 5 mindfulness training, I will learn different things. You know, no matter how many times I've read it, I feel like, oh, this is another awareness. Okay, you know, yeah, and particularly for tonight, I was, you know, invited to share about 3rd mindfulness training, which is about true love and also about sexual energy. I think I was a bit not comfortable to share in the first place, but then I paused and before I agree with my beloved sister to share here tonight, I looked deeply and what was it that I'm scared of, you know? And I realized immediately that it's the seed of judgment that I'm scared of. So, yeah. So I would like to ask for all your support. Every time I speak from my heart, I will cry. So, you know, I can probably cry a river. But, you know, thank God I'm being given only 8 minutes. So, yeah. Yeah, I ask for your support to just, you know, listen to my sharing with an open heart and do not water the seed of judgment in me. You know, just with, all these few hundred eyes, I'm like not comfortable. It's so funny because in my job for the past 9 years, I'm working in a national TV, so I present news every night. You know, so it's only the camera with me. There's no eyes. There's only one eye, one camera. So now it's like a few hundred of you. I'm like, oh, it's like 300 eyes of judgment on me. So please listen to me with an open mind and, you know, no judgment. Yeah, so true love. Do you want to hear my love story? Yeah. My love story is, I think, it's a fairy tale, I would say. Yeah. A few years ago, like 4 to 5 years ago, I met a very smart, confident, funny, humorous, and a very strong-headed man. And I decided to marry him. I'm still married now, yeah. Yeah, so we decided to live a life together, and it was a fairy tale because in my eyes, because I got a surprise proposal from him in Paris, and we got married in Santorini in Greece. And I see all the girls are like, yeah, fairy tale. Yeah, so it's a fairy tale, yeah, of course. Yeah, but falling in love is the easiest part, always. It's easy, I tell you, it's easy. But to stay in love, it's not easy. I think as a girl, as a young girl, everyone will agree with me that we dream of a fairy tale wedding, fairy tale marriage and whatnot. But then I think all Disneyland stories, they ended up on happily ever after once they got married. That's it. They did not tell you what happened after marriage. Life, right? Because it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant all the time. Yeah, so me and my partner, we had a few years of unpleasant experience with each other. So, and I started to question myself, whether is this my true love? Is he my true love? Could there be someone else? Could it be someone else that I should spend my life with, not him? So I started to question, is he my true love? And I still question when I came last year to Plum Village. And when I took this 5 mindfulness training, it is a golden opportunity for me to be able to stop and look deeply. Like, what does it mean with true love? Because in this third mindfulness that I recite every month, it always ends with practicing true love. I know that I will continue beautifully into the future, but how am I able to do that? Like, if I'm not sure whether it is true love or not, like, how do I practice? And so the way I practice this is first to recite this training, this 5 mindfulness training, and then Plum Village Online on YouTube helped me a lot. All the Dharma talks, because I cannot travel too often to Plum Village and meet my brothers and sisters. So yeah, I learned a lot from all the Dharma talk, and I start to read a lot. Zen Master's book. It was always a very, like different awareness every time I practice this particular training on true love. And it is still an ongoing journey. But I've noticed what kind of seeds is it that I experience, or I realize, I learn to look deeply, and I realize that, there's a lot of seed of expectation. And the seeds of expectations was watered by my grandparents, my mom, my relatives, my aunties and uncles. They expect a lot from me, and therefore I expect the same on my husband, my partner. And I think I was just being unfair towards him, and I realized that I don't even know how to practice true love, and how can I expect him to love me? How can I expect someone to love me truly when I, myself, don't know how to truly take care of myself, take care of these feelings, take care of these seeds inside me? Like so much seeds of anger, disappointment, expectation. So, yeah, so this, it is an ongoing journey for me, but I don't know whether my partner will know how to practice true love, but it's not within my control. So I decided that I will take care of myself first in order for me to be able to take care of him and his feelings. There's so many awareness in this particular mindfulness training on true love. Things like knowing that sexual desire is not love. Wow, really? I wish I knew this before I come to Plum Village. Like, oh, sexual desire is not love? Really? Like, if I have a sexual energy towards someone, maybe I like him, you know? But by practicing 5 mindfulness training, I realized that I learned about understanding the true nature behind my sexual energy. This sexual energy is not made of sexual energy itself. There's so many things that water this energy, which is why it manifests. So, yeah, I'm learning to take care of it. Because this sexual energy is probably watered by loneliness, watered by so many other things. Validation. I seek validation. I have a big seed of validation in me. That I need someone to water this validation seed inside me by telling me that I'm beautiful, by telling me that they like me, that they're attracted to me. But yeah, we can talk about sexual energy all night long, but I want to give my sister and brother their chance to share about how they practice. But yeah, to cut the long story short, you can ask any questions after this. And to all of you who are starting to question, like how is it possible for you to apply what you've learned or what you've practiced here in Plum Village, in outside world, in your home, for your relationship, I really encourage you to consider taking this training, 5 mindfulness training. Thank you.
Before I start my sharing, I'll just read the text of the second mindfulness training first. Second mindfulness training, true happiness. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I am committed to practicing generosity in my thinking, speaking, and acting. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others, and I will share my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in need. I will practice looking deeply to see that the happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering, that true happiness is not possible without understanding and compassion, and that running after wealth, fame, power, and sense of pleasures can bring much suffering and despair. I am aware that happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have more than enough conditions to be happy. I am committed to practicing right livelihood so that I can help reduce the suffering of living beings on earth and reverse the process of global warming. Namo Shakya Budaya Budaya. dear respected Thai, dear brothers and sisters, and dear friends. My name is Liên Hương and I'm from Vietnam. I received the 5 mindfulness training 4 years ago when I attended my first retreat in Plum Village in France, and my Dharma name was Fastness of the Heart. And I decided to receive the 5 mindfulness trainings back then because I really wanted to find a way to practice so that I can expand my heart, especially for those who are not so lovable. Because I had some sufferings back then that I really want to take care of, rather than suppressing them. And like many people here, I also started to practice when I had a lot of sufferings in me, and I didn't know how to handle them. And the source of suffering in my perception back then was actually my father, and the sharing today is kind of special to me because it was his birthday yesterday. It was his continuation day yesterday. And and I'm really grateful for having a chance to be here and share my story with my dad. And this is the 3rd day of the retreat already, and I got to hear many stories from you guys, from my Dharma sharing family, and I know that I am not the only one who has some kind of difficult relations with the parents. And this is kind of not a good news. For my case, to be honest, my dad is a person who has many characteristics that can be considered unlovely. It's not so lovely. And our relationship, between myself and my dad, had been very turbulent since I was a teenager, until I think in my even late 20s. And we just can't communicate. We disagree about everything, and to make it worse, I live very far from my parents since I was young. And when you live far from your parents, you are exposed to a different culture, different lifestyles. And when you come back to your parents, it is really hard because we have developed totally different personalities and worldviews. And so, and on top of that, like I've mentioned, I felt that many of my dad's traits were not so lovely, and I thought that those characteristics made him the source of my suffering, and those sufferings really had a lot of impacts on my physical as well as my mental health for quite some years. And today I was invited to share about the second mindfulness training, which is true happiness. And to me, the mindfulness trainings are not the things that I have to achieve perfectly. It's like a guiding star for me to follow. Although my practice is far from being complete, I know that the 5 mindfulness trainings are there for me to guide me on the path. And about the second mindfulness training, it's just like the rest, the other 4. It is very broad. It has many points, and it is not possible for me to talk about all of them today. So I'm going to just share about 2 particular points that I felt really inspired and had some kind of fruits from the practice of these 2 points, and I'm going to just read those. So the first point that I would like to share with you is this particular sentence. I will practice looking deeply to see that the happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering. That true happiness is not possible without understanding and compassion. Before I got to know about the practice, I was a very independent person, had a strong ego, and I still am. And I thought that my happiness is totally dependent on myself, not other people. But when I started to practice and I read this text, I realized that no, I'm not the only person who decide my happiness. Because whenever I go home and stay with my parents, if our relationship is that turbulent, we can't communicate, we can't look at each other's eyes during our meals, we barely talk during the day, I suffer and everybody suffer. And also, because I had such a difficult relationship with my dad, it was a motivation for me to practice looking deeply, day by day. Through walking meditation, through sitting meditation. Sometimes it was so difficult that I had to consult the brothers and sisters during the retreats. And after quite a few years, then it occurred to me, a kind of insight that occurs to me that my dad is actually a person that has a lot of sufferings. And I really like the guided sitting meditation this morning, when our brother offered us, and that was exactly what I felt. And my dad was not just a wounded child; he was a wounded young man. And thanks to the practice, thanks to some hours of sitting and walking in mindfulness, I realized that my dad went through a lot of sufferings in his life. He had a difficult job in a very toxic environment. He had a different kind of education for myself, which is why we can't communicate. I kind of see the non-self of my dad. I see that he is not that unlovable person that I always perceived him that way. He is made of the conditions that he was in throughout his life, and that's why he behaved that way. And I kind of reacted to him also in a violent way in my mind. And I see that I also made him suffer. Now, thinking back, this is such a simple fact that it is so obvious to me now, but it wasn't that clear to me back then. As a 17-year-old girl, I always believed that it was just my dad who made me suffer. But now, thanks to the practice, thanks to the second mindfulness training, my perception has changed, and I'm happy about that, because it kind of softened my heart towards my dad, and I also see that I was also a source of suffering to my dad. So that was kind of my experience with practicing this particular point in the second mindfulness training. And the second point that I would like to share about is this particular sentence. I am aware that happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have more than enough conditions to be happy. So I really treasured this particular part of the second mindfulness training because recently I went through some kind of crisis, job crisis. Couldn't find what I want to do in life, couldn't decide where I would stay, and sometimes when I wanted to work, no one wants to take me. So I was like in a kind of the bottom of my life, and I could have been in despair with this kind of situation if I had not had the practice a few years ago. But now I don't feel that I suffer that much, and I don't feel that I am in this very deep, in this state of deep depression or upset or despair, is because I I can realize the conditions, the very simple but miraculous conditions around me that can make me happy. I am the kind of person who likes to do pretty crazy things in my life. I mean, crazy, maybe in the eyes of my parents, who grew up in a pretty conservative society, and they grew up 30 years ago, and I mean, I have done quite some crazy and daring things in my life, and at this stage, I'm deeply grateful for my parents for accepting me as who I am. I made them feel very insecure a lot of times. Like, for example, when I decided to come here for quite a few months, then my parents worried. I mean, my dad told me, don't become a nun, come back soon. This is just one of the examples, like I did things that really made my parents worried, and but they still let me do what I like to do. They gave me wholehearted support. They never, question what I'm doing. They might express their objections, but in a pretty gentle way, and I really, really appreciate that. And another moment that that kind of made me realize the conditions that can make me happy in a very simple way was when there was a day when I was at home, and I have a laptop, and I install the Mindfulness Bell app on my laptop, and it rings every 15 or 30 minutes, like when you're working and so engrossed in your computer, then ding, then you just stop and breathe. And that day it happened to me as well. I was working, and it was quite late, like 12 p.m. I had some work to do on my computer, and my dad, he just had to eat before me because it was late already, and he couldn't wait. And I was working upstairs, he was eating downstairs, and the moment when the mindfulness bell for my laptop rang, I stopped and breathed, and it was very quiet. The house was quiet, and at that moment, I suddenly heard the sounds that my dad made with the utensils, like the chopsticks and the bowl, very light and soft sounds. When you eat, just like when we have the silent meal here in Palm Village, I just heard those sounds, and those sounds suddenly made me so touched, because those sounds that my dad made reminded me that he is there for me. He is still alive, strong and healthy, and open his arms to accept me wherever I am. When I don't know where to go, I go back to my parents, and they just give me a shelter to take refuge in. And what else could I ask more, right? So that moment I felt that I am the happiest person on earth. It's just because I have my parents with me. And it also reminded me that I should treasure their presence, because who knows, one day impermanence will come and we don't know what will happen. But I just know that this moment my parents are here for me, and I'm happy, and that's about it. That's enough. So yeah, so that was my just my little sharing about the second mindfulness training. Hope you enjoy it, and thank you very much for listening.
The first mindfulness training, reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating the insight of interbeing and compassion, and learning ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking or in my way of life. Seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn come from dualistic and discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and in the world. Dear respected Tay, dear brothers and sisters, dear friends, my name is Nick. I'm from Australia, from Sydney. I've been practicing for about 3 years now with the Wake Up group in Sydney. I'm so grateful to the sisters and to you all for giving me this opportunity to share on the first mindfulness training. I feel very nourished by looking out and seeing everyone's smiling faces. So I first heard about the 5 mindfulness trainings about 2.5 years ago at the first Plum Village retreat that I went to. And I remember a friend of mine who I went with, who was a bit more experienced than I was. She'd already taken them. She was very enthusiastically explaining them to me. I think she was trying to convince me to take them. But I didn't take them on that retreat. After hearing them the first time, I felt like there was a lot there that I hadn't been able to kind of digest and to understand properly in terms of sort of what was involved and what it meant for me and what it meant for the kind of person that I would then be and what my practice would be like. But I ended up taking them about 6 months after that at the Wake Up retreat 2 years ago in France, Plum Village. And I think the main reason that convinced me to take them was that every time I opened up the 5 mindfulness trainings to read them, I found so much more than what I remembered. Even just reading the training then, I kind of felt like I wanted to stop halfway through each sentence just to take in all the words that were there, all the information that was there, all the guidance that was there. And it made me feel like, it made me feel very safe, it made me feel very comfortable, it gave me a lot of courage knowing that there was something that I could always turn to and always come back to. And I love how Tay has reworked the precepts into something which can come from us. So when I read the trainings, I don't see it as coming from outside, as coming from what someone else thinks I should do, but as coming from my own understanding, even if I don't quite have it yet. But it makes me feel very, very solid, very at peace with myself and my own practice. So the first thing that comes to mind, and I think the first thing that comes to a lot of people's minds when we hear the first mindfulness training is about what we eat. So when I started practicing, I was not a vegetarian. I remember a point in my life about 10 years ago when I used to make a point of eating meat at every meal, just because I don't know, I felt like it was my thing, it was what I did. And then I remember about 5 years ago, I started noticing things in my stomach when I ate too much red meat. So I stopped eating things like steak. But I was still eating bits of chicken and pork when I started practicing, and a lot of fish. But I remember on this first retreat that I went to, the thing that I enjoyed the most was mindful eating. It was my first time eating so much delicious Vietnamese food. Just seeing everyone else around me eat in such a way that it would nourish them, I was very touched by it. So I remember I went home and I tried to practice mindful eating at home. But wow, it's it's very hard to practice mindful eating when you have an animal on your fork. And so I think that was kind of the moment where I started to realize that what we eat is not just about kind of what we feel like and what our bodies feel like, but it's about understanding also where the food comes from and how we relate to where our food comes from. And so I met a friend in this retreat who told me he became a vegetarian overnight, which I was very impressed with. For me, it took about 2 years to slowly become a vegetarian. But I feel very comfortable with it now. I don't feel like I'm doing it for any ideological reason or to be associated with any kind of lifestyle or anything like that. I've also learned recently that animal agriculture is the leading contributor to climate change because of all the land that we have to clear to raise the animals. We feed them so much grain, even though there are so many starving people in the world. That's touched me deeply as well. There's a part in the training about cultivating the inside of it to be, through being aware of what I was eating and the destruction of life and what I was eating. It's made me a lot more aware of just the world around me in general and how I sit in relation to the world around me. So that's one of the main practices that I've been working with the 5 mindfulness trainings. Another one, which has come up on this retreat, has been to water my seeds of compassion for the mosquitoes. So yesterday I was in Dharma sharing and was very excited to be there, very happy to meet some new friends, a very lovely family. Every 5 seconds or so, hear a little buzzing in my ear. Breathing in, I know I'm angry. Breathing out, I feel frustrated. But something I've come to learn from reading these trainings, particularly the first one, is that in these situations, I think I have a choice. I have a choice to water these seeds of anger and frustration, or I can choose to water the seeds of compassion in me. So when I hear a mosquito around me, or when I see an ant crawling over my mango stems at lunch, I think about this. I think about watering the seeds of compassion in me. And I think this is something which kind of touched me on a bigger scale as well. So a few years ago, there was 2 young Australians who had been in prison in a foreign country for attempting to smuggle drugs. And in this country they have the death penalty. And so a few years ago, these 2 Australians who were young enough to be in this retreat, they were killed, they were executed. And I just remember thinking at the time that it was so obvious that all this was just being done to make a political statement, to prove a point, but that it wasn't going to do anything. And that this kind of reaction to just punish, to just kill, doesn't actually touch the root of the problem. And I'm sure that this country still has a lot of problems with drug smuggling. I find similar things when countries go to war to fight terrorism, to fight terrorists. We still have so much anger and so much violence and so much terrorism in the world. And so I kind of think about that when I have these choices to make. I can react in a very, I can act in a very reactionary way, or I can sit with myself with the seeds inside of me and try to understand the problem from my own experience and from what I can feel inside of it. And so this training, Reverence for Life, there's a very beautiful poem from Tara. It's also a very beautiful song, which you might hear around here sometime. The last line, I think it goes, reverence is the nature of my love. And so when I hear the word reverence, often I think of love. And so sometimes I like to think of this training as love for life, having a love for of life in me and life around me. Yesterday morning, when the brother was instructing us in walking meditation, he was saying that when we walk mindfully, we can get in touch with all the elements of life which are around us. And I enjoy very much being able to walk in such a beautiful place with all the trees and the birds and the butterflies. And I've learned so much from all these things. I kind of see them as my teachers. I think it would be very difficult to practice walking meditation if you were just in a blank space, in a dark room. So it's very lovely to be able to be in touch with all these elements of life, which can teach us so much and which can nourish us so much. So I think the main thing which I've worked with this training is just coming back to myself and trying to understand the suffering within myself, knowing that if I keep acting this kind of way, that's just going to act on my instincts to punish, to be angry. Actually, I'm never going to be able to genuinely be able to touch the roots of the suffering inside of myself. So the Dharma name that I received when I took the trainings was Peaceful Solidity of the Heart, because I wanted to be able to cultivate a very solid practice. And when I read these trainings, and they invite us to make the trainings our own, I am aware of the suffering, I am determined to cultivate this. And then I get these feelings of solidity and of peace, and I feel very nourished by it. So, thank you for the time and listening.
So dear friends, thank you so much for your beautiful sharings. We very much appreciate your sincerity, your openness for sharing. We learn a lot from that. We must say that we are very grateful to our young people, to every young people, for their courage, for their strong motivation, helping them to leave behind all the pleasures, coming here and learning how to live together simply and peacefully together as a family. So we learn how to change our way of living, our way of seeing things, so that we can contribute our best. Together we can contribute our best to the making of a better world for everyone to enjoy. So we think that we better stop here because it's quite late now, and we have a celebration early tomorrow morning, celebrating the Buddha birthday. So we need to go to bed early to get fresh again tomorrow for the beautiful celebration. So before we invite the three sounds there, we would like to let you know that we shall have a transmission ceremony on the last day of the retreat on Monday the 20th, right? The morning of Monday, the 20th. So if you are interested in receiving the mindfulness training, you can fill in the form. Where are the form that can be given to you by the facilitator in your Dharma sharing group. So thank you again everyone for your time. kind support for your deep listening, for your patience, and we wish everyone a very good night. And we continue to, and we practice noble silence after this to maintain peace inside and around. Thank you.